Alright everyone, it's time for the Occult, video number 359, The Return of Paganism. After more than 1,000 years of attempted suppression against basically every pagan group in the world, we're still here. And by pagan, I'm talking about pan-paganism as being effectively that, the paganus, the outlanders, the rural, rustic folk, basically. I'm talking about religious forces that are outside, mainly at this point, of the state or socio-political mainstream. I think that's more of an appropriate definition, because the differentiation between two spiritual groups in that vein, like saying, well, this Norse group, they're pagan, but this Orthodox Christian group is non-pagan, the definition doesn't really necessarily need to apply to that more rigidly. There are people that are closer to, in my opinion, paganism from within Christianity simply because they happen to be more mystic. Certainly they're closer to occultism. And then there are people that practice what you would conceive of as paganism. They dress up in the robe and carry around the mead and the antlers, but they're effectively just doing it as a floor show. Satanism is like this. The COS is an atheistic organization. It's not anything to do with devil worship. So often we get these things mixed up. I think that genuine paganism and occultism writ large, mysticism in the general sense, even within more mainline religions, is growing very rapidly. And I was talking about this back at the end of the 2000s. Already then, you had a huge resurgence of especially Norse paganism, to an extent Greek-style paganism, Hellenism, and then also Wicca. Wicca being more modern, it's loosely based on certain occult principles. I like hedge Wicca. Yeah, anyone who likes to grow a bunch of herbs and play with cauldrons, yeah, that's fine with me. You're basically a slightly spiritual hippie. I think of it as a positive thing. It doesn't necessarily need to be historically the most traditionalistic. All of these groups are growing. But it's spread out further than that. Right now you also have, I would point out, a Hindu revival. And this is something that's rather important. Now, Hinduism fundamentally would be more similar in some ways. Certain types of it, of course. There are 1,000 different subschools of Hinduism within the few main ones. The more mystic side of it is definitively pagan. If you look at what the Agori do, for example, there's no centralized practice that you would associate with an established centralized state system or a regulated religious stringency. It simply doesn't exist. And they're growing. The Hindus right now are openly calling for Hindu hegemony over the Indian subcontinent, for example. There are political groups that are beginning to form, which are the more statist version of what I would conceive of as a volkische revival. And we see those too. We see back to the land movements proliferating right now. Survivalism is proliferating. See, under times of stress, people have given up the cross because it didn't save them. And so now they're taking up the sword. And they're not taking it up in the name of Orthodox religious tradition. Much like the Orthodox political traditions are dying, basically they're a mirror image of each other. The mainline religions, because they're corrupt and they tend to peddle political favors and be intertwined with the state system in many countries, are effectively tarnished the same way the establishment is dying off. The old guard establishment, right now, you look at what just happened in France, is losing its capability to govern. Along with the old establishment inevitably goes the old established ways of religion as well. We saw this during the volkische movements of the late 19th, early 20th centuries as well, which, by the way, initially were quite positive and good. We saw people farming, getting back to the land, abandoning urban existence, healthy living movements, eugenics is thrown in with this to an extent, trying to make more children, fill the land. You had a return of more traditional Christian spirituality. You also had a return of explicitly pagan traditions. Now, some of it was a social mock-up, much like it is now. But what really it represents, and this is why paganism is returning, is that the old guard has become boring. It's no longer fulfilling people's needs. And their needs are getting more profuse because times are hard. So they're turning to what effectively is religious cosplay in some cases, what is very orthodox, reverting to an extreme traditionalism in some cases. There are some pagan groups that are very, very liberal in their views. There are others that are now proliferating that are not. They are very, very much traditionalistic, nationalistic, etc. you're getting these movements proliferating because people have a gaping hole in their life, and something needs to fill that. And not everyone can be a rugged individualist and fill their own holes up. They need a road crew to fill the pothole. The problem is that the old road crew is very much like the state, again, with which it's intertwined. It's 5 dudes sitting around watching one dude shovel gravel. And so people are looking for something different. After thousands of years of attempts to suppress the people and their religions, which is really what I would define paganism in loosely as well, we're returning. And that's because the other religious orders are associated with dying, corrupt political movements mainly. Again, greatest example is India. Hindu revivalists are now openly calling for basically annexing Pakistan and Bangladesh. Of course, Pakistan is Muslim majority. There are also 100 million Muslims in India. Bangladesh, I believe, is majority Islamic. I can't quite remember how large the Hindu population is there. The main core is in India. That's the one Hindu nation. You'll remember that originally India was comprised of those other nations as well. It was partitioned partially because of social problems due to religious hegemony. And now they're calling for that land back. Not likely that it'll happen. Pakistan has a nuclear weapons system at its disposal, but it could. It is feasible that you'll see the reunification of the Indian subcontinent. It would be pagan. It wouldn't be volkish in that case. It'd be more state-centric. Of course, the state will use the uprising, survivalist, volkish, back-to-the-land style movements too. Social movements are usually co-opted over time by a political force. If they can't beat them, suppress them out of existence, they'll find a way to absorb them, because it means votes, it means money and all of these things. Very interesting topic. History is repeating itself. Now, basically, I guess we're in the 1930s at the moment. If you look at the economy, the comparison is definitely there. You have frenetic and stupid government that's unable to solve the situation. You have looming potential world war. You have volkish proliferation. Yeah, it's basically, I'd say that we're closer to the 30s than the 70s at the moment, which, by the way, should worry some people. But as far as paganism is concerned, it's having a field day. People are getting exhausted with the old ways, and so they're returning to ways that are more fulfilling. I personally find that to be very, very positive. Practice some magic. Interpret your religion mystically, at least. That's about all. Peace out.